You stand in the hall of Ma'at, where towering pillars vanish into shadows above. Torches flicker along the polished stone, casting golden light across walls carved with the words of eternity. At the far end sits Osiris, draped in white linen, crowned with the Atef headdress, silent in judgment. Before him a golden scale gleams. On one side rests a single white feather, the feather of Ma'at. On the other, the heart of the deceased. Beside the scales stands Anubis, the jackal-headed guardian of the dead. And to the right, with an ibis-shaped head and a scribe's reed in hand, waits Thoth, ready to record the verdict that will decide the fate of the soul forever. In this chamber, no word can be hidden, no deed forgotten. The heart, the seat of memory and truth, must reveal everything. If it balances with the feather of Ma'at, the soul is granted passage into the field of reeds, a paradise of eternal abundance. But if it tips heavy with wrongdoing, it is cast to Amit, the devourer of souls, erasing the spirit from existence. The gods watch in silence, the tribunal waits, and Thoth, the divine scribe, prepares to inscribe the final judgment in his scrolls, never to be altered, never to be undone. What if the truth of your soul was written before you even died? What if every action, every thought, every secret weighed against the eternal law of balance? This is the story of Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, and his unbreakable connection to the hall of Ma'at, the court of the afterlife where all must stand. Tonight we unravel the rituals described in the ancient Book of the Dead, explore the role of the 42 divine judges, and witness the fear, awe, and hope that shaped the Egyptian vision of eternity. We will journey through the cosmic courtroom, meet Ma'at as both goddess and principal, uncover the symbolism of the feather and the heart, and enter the field of reeds where the justified live forever. We will face Amit, the devourer of the unjust, and witness Thoth's eternal role as guardian of truth. This is more than myth. It is history carved into stone, preserved in papyri, and echoed in the prayers of the dead for thousands of years. Welcome to the Hall of Ma'at. In the vast pantheon of ancient Egypt, where gods rose from the waters of creation, Thoth emerged as one of the most vital. Known to the Egyptians as Jehuti, his name carried the weight of eternity, often translated as "he who is like the ibis." In the oldest pyramid texts, written more than 4,000 years ago, Thoth appears as a divine counselor, the one who speaks on behalf of the gods and ensures that cosmic order, Ma'at, is never broken. Egyptian tradition holds many tales of his origins. Some say Thoth was born from the lips of Ra, the sun god, a living word brought into existence. Others claimed he sprang from the skull of Set, born of conflict and intellect. In Hermopolitan theology, he was the self-created god of wisdom, who organized the chaos of creation through speech and calculation. His presence was so essential that the Greeks, centuries later, would compare him to their Hermes, calling him Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice great. Thoth was most often depicted with the head of an ibis, his curved beak resembling the crescent moon. The bird was sacred, symbolizing wisdom, precision, and calculation. At times he appeared as a baboon, an animal Egyptians associated with the rising sun and divine judgment. In both forms, Thoth's gaze was eternal, measuring, recording, balancing. No gesture, no word, no moment escaped his notice. Thoth's dominion was vast. He was the god of writing, the keeper of language, the master of hieroglyphs. Every decree of the gods was recorded by his hand. He was the Lord of time, credited with creating the 365-day calendar by gambling with the moon and adding 5 extra days to the year. He was the patron of magic, said to possess the Book of Thoth, a text so powerful it could command the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. But above all, Thoth was the guardian of truth, the divine mind that preserved the balance of Ma'at. In the celestial court, Thoth was more than a scribe. He was the divine recorder of destiny. When Ra spoke, it was Thoth who wrote. When Osiris presided over the dead, it was Thoth who documented their fate. In one passage from the coffin texts, he is called He Who Balances, the one who weighs the truth and ensures no falsehood passes into eternity. His words did not merely describe reality, they shaped it. To record was to make permanent, to bind thought into being. To the Egyptians, Thoth was wisdom embodied. To psychology, he stands as the archetype of the wise old man, the eternal keeper of memory, the guardian of knowledge. He is the divine recorder, the impartial witness to human life. In him, humanity's longing for truth finds a face. In every age, we imagine a figure who remembers all, who ensures no deed escapes justice. Thoth is that figure, immortalized in stone and papyrus and alive in the stories that have survived across 4 millennia. But Thoth's role was not limited to the living. His greatest task awaited in the afterlife, in the Hall of Ma'at, where he would stand as the impartial scribe of eternity. There, every soul was measured, every truth revealed, and every lie stripped bare. To understand Thoth fully, we must step into that cosmic courtroom, the place where gods judged men and men faced the weight of their own hearts. Across the endless sands of Egypt, carved into stone and written in sacred texts, appears a single feather, an ostrich plume resting upright. This is no ordinary feather, it is the eternal symbol of Ma'at. To the ancient Egyptians, Ma'at was not just a goddess. She was the very principle of truth, balance, and harmony. Without her, the world itself would crumble into chaos. Ma'at was depicted as a radiant woman, crowned with the feather of truth. She is seated beside the gods, standing at the throne of Ra, guiding the movement of the sun across the sky. Her presence is not fleeting, it is eternal. For the Egyptians, Ma'at was both a goddess and a law, both a being and a principle. She lived within every judgment, every ritual, every act of justice. Imagine the universe as a delicate set of scales, one feather on one side, the weight of existence on the other. Ma'at ensured that the scales never tipped into chaos. She was the order in the stars, the rhythm of the Nile's flood, the moral compass of kings and commoners alike. To live in Ma'at was to live in truth, justice, and harmony. To violate Ma'at was to invite Isfet, chaos, destruction, and eternal dishonor. Ma'at was not confined to the heavens. She was the guiding principle of daily Egyptian life. Farmers brought offerings to temples to maintain balance. Judges were called priests of Ma'at, swearing to uphold her feather of truth. Pharaohs declared themselves guardians of Ma'at, ruling not by force but by the sacred order she embodied. Every political law, every court ruling, every ritual act was performed in her name. But nowhere was Ma'at's power more profound than in the afterlife. In the Hall of Ma'at, every soul was brought before the scales. On one side, the heart, seat of one's deeds and intentions. On the other, the feather of Ma'at. If the heart outweighed the feather, the soul was devoured by Amit, erased from existence. If the scales balanced, the soul entered the eternal paradise of the field of reeds. The feather was more than a symbol. It was destiny itself. Psychologists like Carl Jung would later recognize in Ma'at the eternal archetype of balance, the universal longing for harmony within the human soul. She is the voice of conscience, the eternal lawgiver, the inner call toward justice. To the Egyptians, she was not an abstract ideal, but the foundation of existence itself. Though thousands of years have passed since the temples of Ma'at fell silent, her principle still echoes in every human society. Courts of law, the weighing of justice, the search for balance between truth and power, all are shadows of Ma'at. Her feather still rests upon the scales of humanity. Imagine stepping into a hall where the ceiling vanishes into shadow, upheld by colossal pillars carved with the names of gods older than memory itself. This is the Hall of Ma'at, the cosmic courtroom of the afterlife. Here, silence is not emptiness. It is judgment waiting to fall. No mortal enters this place alive. Only the soul, stripped of flesh, stands before eternity. But the soul does not stand alone. Before it stretch rows of divine judges, 42 gods, each assigned to a law, each demanding truth. Their faces are unyielding, their gaze sharper than any blade. Each judge embodies one aspect of Ma'at: justice, morality, harmony. Each one waits to hear whether the soul has lived in truth or in lies. The atmosphere is unlike any earthly trial. There is awe, but there is also fear. For in this hall there are no appeals, no second chances. The heart speaks for itself. A whisper of hope lingers that the scales will balance, that the feather will not outweigh the heart. But with hope comes dread, for if the scales fail, there is only obliteration. Upon the throne at the far end of the hall sits Osiris, lord of the underworld. Once a king upon the earth, now the eternal judge of souls. His skin is green like fertile earth, his robes white like eternity. In his hands the crook and flail, symbols of rulership and justice. Osiris does not speak lightly. His silence alone weighs upon the soul heavier than stone. And there, close to the scales, sits Thoth, the divine scribe. In one hand, his reed pen, in the other his scroll of everlasting truth. He does not judge, he does not condemn, but every word is recorded, every outcome, every judgment, every detail of the soul's fate is written by Thoth's hand. His writings are eternal, they cannot be erased. At the center of the hall stand the scales of Ma'at. On one side, the heart of the deceased, heavy with memory, with deeds, with secrets untold. On the other, the single feather of Ma'at, a symbol so light and yet so powerful that it determines eternity. If the heart is lighter than the feather, the soul passes into paradise. If not, then Ammit waits. Lurking beside the scales is Ammit the devourer, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus. Ammit waits for those whose hearts are heavy with falsehood. Should the heart outweigh the feather, Ammit will devour it whole, condemning the soul to eternal oblivion. No second life, no resurrection, no memory, only erasure. The Hall of Ma'at is not merely a courtroom of the dead, it is the foundation of order itself. What happens here echoes across the cosmos. For if truth is upheld here, balance continues in the heavens and on earth. If falsehood prevails, the very order of the universe trembles. The Egyptians believed the soul's judgment was not only personal, it was cosmic. In the end, the voice that lingers loudest is not that of Osiris or the judges, but of Thoth's pen. What he records becomes history, unchangeable, permanent. In his writings, every judgment of every soul is preserved for eternity. The Hall of Ma'at is therefore not only a courtroom, it is a library of the afterlife, a record of all who ever lived, written by the hand of the divine scribe. Long before the soul entered the Hall of Ma'at, its journey was written down. The Egyptians called it the Book of Going Forth by Day, what we know today as the Book of the Dead. It was not a single book, but a collection of spells, prayers, and instructions. These texts were buried with the deceased, inscribed on papyrus or on the walls of tombs. They were quite literally a guidebook for eternity. In spell 125, the most famous passage, the soul enters the Hall of Ma'at. The text speaks in the first person, as though the dead themselves are speaking. I have not committed sin. I have not stolen. I have not slain men and women. This is the negative confession, a declaration of innocence before the divine judges. Without these words, the heart stood no chance of balancing against the feather. But the Egyptians did not see the soul as one. They believed in many aspects of the self. The Ba, often depicted as a bird with a human head, was the personality, the part that could move between worlds. The Ka was the life force, the double that gave energy to the body in life and needed offerings in death. And beyond them was the Akai, the transfigured spirit, radiant and eternal, achieved only if the soul passed judgment. Without balance in the Hall of Ma'at, the Ak could never be born. Survival in the afterlife was not left to chance. Priests performed rituals, families brought offerings, and above all, the words of the Book of the Dead were placed close to the deceased. Each spell was a safeguard. Some gave the soul power to pass gates guarded by demons. Others granted the voice to speak before Osiris. Without the words, the soul was voiceless. With them, it could defend itself in the eternal courtroom. Here lies the greatest mystery, why writing held such power. To the Egyptians, words were not symbols, they were alive. A name written was a name preserved forever. A spell written was a spell that could be performed again, even by the gods. This belief tied directly to Thoth, the master of writing. His hand recorded every soul's fate, and his wisdom taught humans that ink and memory could outlast death itself. The Book of the Dead was more than instruction. It was a bridge. It carried the soul from the tomb into the presence of the gods. It gave the Ba the wings to fly, the Ka the offerings it required, and the Ak the chance to shine eternally. Each spell was a stepping stone until the soul finally reached the Hall of Ma'at, where no spell could hide the truth of the heart. In the Papyrus of Ani, one of the most complete books of the dead, we see the entire scene unfold. Anubis guiding the soul, weighing the heart against the feather, Thoth recording the results, and Osiris seated as the ultimate judge. It is here that writing and judgment meet. The words of the Book of the Dead bring the soul to this moment, but only truth can carry it beyond. To the Egyptians, immortality was not merely passing judgment, it was remembrance. To be written was to exist. To have one's name spoken was to live again. The Book of the Dead was not only about survival in the afterlife, it was about ensuring the memory of the person endured in the cosmos. And who guarded that memory above all? Thoth, the scribe of Ma'at, who wrote what no mortal hand could erase. At the heart of the Hall of Ma'at stands the scale, no ordinary balance, but the axis of eternity itself. Upon it rests the truth of a soul's existence. On one side, the heart, the vessel of memory, morality, and truth. On the other, the single feather of Ma'at, lighter than air, yet weightier than the cosmos. Here, all illusions are stripped away. Only truth remains. To the Egyptians, the heart was not simply an organ, it was the seat of thought, emotion, and morality. They believed the brain played little role after death, but the heart carried every deed, every word, every silence. It was both witness and judge. When placed on the scales, no lie could hide within it. The heart revealed the soul's true weight. Opposite the heart lay the feather of Ma'at. This feather was not ordinary. It embodied balance, justice, and truth. Its lightness was purity itself. To live by Ma'at was to live without deceit, without cruelty, without corruption. A soul that lived in harmony carried no burden, and so its heart would weigh no more than the feather. But even a single lie could tip the scales. Beside the scales stood Anubis, the guardian of the dead. It was he who guided souls into the hall, and it was he who placed the heart on one side, the feather on the other. His hands, precise and steady, ensured no tampering, no error. Anubis was impartial, neither merciful nor cruel. He served only Ma'at. And in the shadow of the scales, ready with reed pen and papyrus, waited Thoth. His role was not to weigh, not to judge, but to record. Every tilt of the scales, every verdict rendered was written into the eternal archive of the gods. Thoth's writings were permanent. A soul acquitted would be remembered as blessed. A soul condemned would vanish, erased by the very ink that preserved truth. The ritual was precise. The deceased, guided by Anubis, stood before the tribunal. The heart was lifted, glowing with the essence of the life once lived. The feather shone in contrast, white against the shadows of eternity. The judges watched without expression. Osiris sat silent upon his throne. The hall seemed to hold its breath as the scales shifted. Suspense filled the air. Would the heart rise light as truth or sink heavy with guilt? This moment was everything. No riches, no titles, no monuments could alter it. The balance was incorruptible. A life lived falsely would betray itself here, exposed by the unyielding feather. To the Egyptians, the feather was more than judgment. It was the embodiment of cosmic law. It was the principle that held the stars in place, that kept the Nile's waters flowing, that made justice possible in kings and peasants alike. To balance with the feather was to live in harmony with the universe. To fail was to fall into chaos. But what if the heart failed? What if its weight dragged the scale downward, tipping the balance against truth? Then all eyes turned, not to Osiris, not to Thoth, but to the beast waiting in silence. Amid the devourer of souls would step forward. The judgment was final. No second trial, no mercy. The soul's fate would be sealed in a single breath. Every journey to the Hall of Ma'at began with Anubis. Jackal-headed and solemn, he was the psychopomp, the guide of souls. It was Anubis who led the deceased from the tomb to the gates of judgment. His black fur symbolized rebirth, like the fertile soil of the Nile after the flood. He was neither merciful nor cruel, he was duty itself, the silent guardian who ensured that every soul stood before the scales. Within the hall, it was Anubis who carefully weighed the heart against the feather of Ma'at. His hands were steady, impartial. To the Egyptians, this was crucial. Judgment had to be precise, without corruption, without error. Anubis embodied the principle that justice must be fair. Every soul, king or peasant, weighed the same. For Egyptians, to be devoured by Ammit was to lose everything. Not torment, not exile, but erasure. No afterlife, no remembrance, no name spoken by the living. The soul would vanish into nothingness as though it had never existed. This was the greatest fear, not pain, but being forgotten. The contrast could not be greater. One path ended in eternal silence, erased by the devourer. The other led to eternity, to paradise beyond human imagination. The Hall of Ma'at was not only a courtroom, it was a crossroads between dread and bliss. For those who passed the trial, the reward was the field of reeds. It was paradise, an eternal Egypt, perfected and abundant. The soul lived among fertile fields that never withered, waters that never dried, and skies that never darkened. There the deceased could farm, feast, and reunite with loved ones, forever sustained in joy and plenty. The field of reeds was not an escape from life, but its continuation in perfection. It mirrored Egypt itself, the Nile's bounty, the field's harvest, the warmth of the sun. Here the justified soul could live as it had before, working, celebrating, and remembering. Only now every day was a day without death, without decay, without end. The Egyptians saw judgment as the sharpest contrast in existence. On one side, the terror of Amit's jaws, the eternal silence of oblivion. On the other, the endless beauty of the field of reeds, the joy of abundance without loss. Every heart that entered the hall knew this choice. The outcome depended not on wealth, not on power, but on truth. And as always, Thoth recorded the verdict. Whether the soul was devoured or whether it was blessed, his pen inscribed the outcome forever. The cosmic balance of Ma'at was preserved, not only by the scale, but by the eternal memory of the divine scribe. The Hall of Ma'at was no ordinary courtroom. It was the greatest tribunal ever imagined, where no action could be hidden, no word forgotten, no thought erased. At the very heart of this cosmic courtroom stood not one judge, but 42, the divine assessors of Ma'at. These assessors were not faceless. They were gods, each representing a principle of truth and morality. Together they ensured that every soul was examined from every angle. In their presence, the soul could not plead ignorance, could not excuse itself by status or privilege. The tribunal was absolute, the law was eternal, and every heart would face its judgment. Each of the assessors bore a name and a role. Some were guardians of truth, others destroyers of falsehood. One watched for blasphemy, another for theft, another for murder. They embodied the belief that morality was not abstract, it was specific, detailed, concrete. To stand before them was to stand before the totality of justice itself, and so the soul began its declaration, the negative confession. Unlike prayers that begged for mercy, this was a statement of innocence. The soul did not say, "Forgive me." It said, "I have not." It was an unflinching testimony of a life lived in harmony with Ma'at. Each confession was a mirror held up to the life of the deceased. I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not spoken evil. I have not polluted the waters, I have not diminished offerings to the gods. 42 statements in all. 42 affirmations that the soul had lived truthfully, balanced within the order of the cosmos. The Egyptians believed the heart carried memory. It could not lie. Every action, every thought, every intention was etched into it. That is why the negative confession was not only ritual, it was proof. If the mouth lied, the heart would betray it, and the scales would reveal the truth. In this tribunal, we see one of humanity's earliest systems of accountability. No one was exempt. Kings stood beside farmers, priests beside servants. All faced the same assessors. This principle, that law must judge all equally, echoed across centuries. We find it later in Greek philosophy and Roman law in modern justice systems. The seeds were planted here in the Hall of Ma'at. Psychologically, the 42 assessors embody the inner tribunal of the human mind. Each voice is a part of conscience, each declaration a defense of one's life. The negative confession is more than ritual. It is the soul's deepest desire to be seen, to be known, and to be judged worthy. The Hall of Ma'at reminds us of a truth that transcends time. Every choice matters. Every word carries weight. Every action leaves a trace. And when the heart is weighed, whether in myth or in the silence of our own conscience, what will it say of us? In the Hall of Ma'at, even Osiris, even Anubis required one more presence, the figure who made judgment eternal. Thoth, the ibis-headed god, stood to the side of the scales, his pen poised, his scroll unrolled. He was not there to judge, he was there to preserve. And in preservation lay the power of truth itself. Thoth did not bend, he did not favor, he did not condemn. His role was impartiality itself. For the Egyptians believed truth was not a matter of opinion, it was eternal. It was Ma'at. And it was Thoth who safeguarded that truth, ensuring that no deception could alter the balance of the scales. To the Egyptians, the spoken word was powerful, but the written word was permanent. What Thoth recorded could not be undone. Once an outcome was inscribed, it became reality. A heart found heavier than the feather would be forever condemned. A heart judged pure would live eternally. The ink of Thoth's pen was the seal of destiny. This is why Thoth was also master of magic, for to write was to create. Words themselves were alive, and once captured in script, they carried force. In the Hall of Ma'at, his writing did not merely record events, it shaped them. What was written was bound. What was bound was truth, and truth was eternal. Thoth embodied memory itself. He reminded the soul and humanity that nothing is forgotten. No act vanishes into silence. Every kindness, every cruelty, every lie, every act of justice is written into the book of eternity. In this way, Thoth was more than a scribe. He was the cosmic recorder of memory, the guarantee that justice was not blind but eternal. Psychologically, Thoth is the archetype of the wise recorder, the voice of conscience that keeps track of every deed. He is the reminder that truth cannot be hidden, that actions have consequences. In every culture, this archetype reappears. The divine witness, the celestial notary, the eternal librarian of human life. Without Thoth, judgment would be fleeting, spoken in the moment and lost to silence. But with Thoth, judgment became eternal, inscribed in the very order of the cosmos. He was indispensable, for he was the one who ensured Ma'at's balance was not only declared, but preserved for all time. In the end, it was Thoth's hand that closed the story of every soul. For in his scrolls nothing could be erased, and no truth could be hidden. Once he wrote, eternity itself remembered. And so the ibis-headed god, silent and steady, stood as the guardian of Ma'at, the witness, the scribe, the eternal protector of truth. The Greeks, too, envisioned judgment after death. In Hades, 3 judges, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, listened to the souls and assigned them their fates. Like the Hall of Ma'at, their courtroom echoed the belief that actions in life shaped one's eternity. In Hindu mythology, Yama, the god of death, weighed the karma of each soul. Every action, good or evil, was recorded, just as Thoth inscribed the deeds of the Egyptians. The soul's future, whether rebirth or liberation, rested on the balance of its actions. In Norse tradition, the soul faced hell, a realm of shadows, or Valhalla, the hall of the honored. Though different in imagery, the underlying belief was the same. Life's deeds shaped the soul's afterlife. In every culture, the idea of a cosmic scale, whether literal or symbolic, echoed across time. In the Hall of Ma'at, the Egyptians saw more than myth. They saw truth itself. The feather, the heart, the scales, they were not just symbols of the afterlife, but of life itself. To live in truth, to carry a light heart, to seek balance, these were not only the keys to paradise, but to the harmony of existence. And in every culture, in every myth, humanity has sought the same wisdom, that justice is eternal and truth is never forgotten. Was Thoth a god who walked among the immortals, or was he a symbol, a living metaphor for the human quest for knowledge? To the Egyptians, he was divine, the scribe of the gods, the master of truth. Yet across history, philosophers have wondered if Thoth represented something deeper. Perhaps he was not only a god, but the embodiment of human reason, memory, and wisdom itself. A timeless figure carved not only in stone, but in the fabric of the mind. Centuries later, Thoth reappeared under a different name, Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great. In Hermetic tradition, texts such as the Corpus Hermeticum and the legendary Emerald Tablets carried the voice of Thoth across time. They spoke of divine order, the unity of heaven and earth, and the mysteries of creation. To many, these writings were proof that Thoth was not only the god of Egypt, but the guardian of a secret current of wisdom that flowed into Greece, Rome, and beyond. The Emerald Tablets promised hidden knowledge, the secrets of transformation, of immortality, of the very structure of reality. In these words, seekers found echoes of Ma'at, the cosmic balance. Just as the hall weighed the heart against the feather, the tablets weighed the human spirit against the truth of the cosmos. Was this coincidence? Or was Thoth always more than a myth, a messenger of eternal wisdom carrying Ma'at's principle across civilizations? Through the centuries, mystics and alchemists whispered that Thoth guarded the deepest secrets of the universe. Secrets too powerful for the unprepared. Some believed the Hall of Ma'at itself was allegory not only of the afterlife, but of life itself. The scales of justice were not distant promises, but daily realities, reminding every soul that their actions shaped their destiny here and beyond. In this view, Thoth was less a deity of stone and more a guide into the hidden architecture of existence. What if the Hall of Ma'at was not only a place beyond death, but a mirror of life itself? Every day, each word and action weighs upon the heart. Every choice tips the scale closer to truth or deception, balance or chaos. The tribunal of gods becomes in this allegory the tribunal of conscience. Thoth records not only in the afterlife, but within the memory of humanity itself. Yet questions remain. Was Thoth a divine being who truly stood in the Hall of Ma'at, scroll in hand? Or was he the symbol of an eternal truth, that knowledge, justice, and memory cannot be escaped? Did the Emerald Tablets preserve his voice across ages? Or were they the creations of later sages seeking to capture his essence? The mysteries endure like the scales themselves, balanced between belief and skepticism, faith and philosophy. In the end, the mystery of Thoth is itself a kind of judgment. Perhaps he was God, perhaps symbol, perhaps both. Yet in every version, his role remains the same: the guardian of Ma'at, the recorder of truth, the keeper of wisdom both seen and unseen. And as long as humanity seeks meaning in justice, in knowledge, and in balance, the shadow of Thoth will linger, silent, eternal, and watching. Across time and culture, one truth has endured. Justice and accountability are eternal human concerns. The Egyptians gave it form in the Hall of Ma'at, where the heart was weighed against the feather of truth. Today, though the scales may be hidden, their meaning lingers. In courts of law, in the conscience of individuals, in the unseen balance of cause and effect, humanity still longs for the certainty of judgment, the assurance that truth will prevail. The Hall of Ma'at finds echoes in every corner of human life. In the courtroom, justice is weighed with laws and evidence. In the mind, conscience holds its own silent trials, judging actions unseen by others. In spiritual traditions, karma ensures that every deed shapes destiny. And in all of these, one question remains. What weight does your heart carry? To live with a light heart is not to live without struggle. It is to live with truth. It is to act with justice, to speak with honesty, to honor balance in the choices of every day. The Egyptians believed that when the heart is unburdened by falsehood, it rises, just as the feather rises on the wind. Perhaps this was their greatest wisdom, that eternity is shaped not by grand gestures, but by the weight of truth carried in every moment of life. Philosophically, the Hall of Ma'at is more than myth. It is allegory for the human condition. Each of us stands daily at our own scales, weighed not only by gods, but by conscience, by memory, by truth itself. The Egyptians gave these trials a grand stage, the cosmic courtroom of eternity. But in truth, the trial begins long before death. It begins now in every choice, in every word, in every silent act of justice or betrayal. And so we end where we began, in the Hall of Ma'at, where the heart is weighed and the truth is revealed. The story of Thoth and the Hall is not only ancient, it is eternal. For perhaps in the end we are all standing in that hall, waiting for the scales to tell our truth. As the scales settle in the Hall of Ma'at, one final question lingers. Would your heart balance today? Would it rise as lightly as the feather of truth, or would it sink under the weight of forgotten deeds? This is not just the judgment of myth. It is the reflection of every life. If the journey of Thoth and the Hall of Ma'at has stirred something within you, then join me as we continue to unlock the ancient mysteries. Subscribe now and step with me into the next chambers of Egyptian myth, the secrets of Osiris, the mystery of Anubis, and countless others waiting in the shadows of eternity. Leave your reflections below, share what you think your heart would weigh tonight, and remember, every comment, every thought adds another voice to this circle of seekers. Together we keep these stories alive. Until next time, may your heart be light and may Ma'at walk beside you.